If I asked you what mankind's greatest invention is, what would your answer be? There are many choices. Would it be fire, which provides warmth, protection, and the ability to cook? Or maybe the wheel, the foundation of trade, commerce, and travel? While both are excellent options, when considering humanity's greatest inventions, we often overlook one of the most essential ones: money. Unlike other human creations, money is intangible. Perhaps that's why we don't often place it on the same level as inventions like fire and the wheel, which are physical. Money is simply an idea, an illusion with no intrinsic value, only holding worth by the importance we assign to it, or at least as money exists today. But this fact doesn't reduce its importance. Before money existed, we had to trade goods and services directly in what we call the barter system. People exchanged items based on what each was willing to give up for something they desired. It was almost like a game. If I wanted your vegetables for dinner, but only raised livestock, I'd have to give you an animal in return for a bag of vegetables. If I wanted shoes, but only made tents, I'd need to trade an entire tent for a pair of shoes. Here, you can see a key problem with this system: asymmetry. As a tent maker, I'd feel cheated exchanging a full shelter for a pair of shoes. Without a standardized medium of exchange, it was challenging for people to find mutually agreeable terms, and waiting for a double coincidence of wants, where each party needed exactly what the other offered, was also inefficient. Money isn't only a medium of exchange, it's also a store of value. Before money, some people couldn't store their wealth due to no fault of their own. Take a farmer who grows tomatoes and a tent maker. The tent maker can produce shelters and trade them year-round with those who need a place to stay, making a steady income. But the tomato farmer can only trade when tomatoes are in season, as they perish quickly. Although both work equally hard, the farmer lacks a way to maintain wealth year-round. Additionally, having an item with limited demand poses challenges. In today's business world, people are advised to find a niche, a small group highly interested in their product. But before money existed, this would have left you with nothing valuable to trade. Those with items everyone wanted, like weapons, animal skins, and salt, were the wealthiest. As demand grew, people started accumulating these items even when they didn't need them, hoping to trade them later. Thus, commodity money was born. People traded goods and services for common items, like salt or weapons, to use them in future exchanges. From salt and weapons to small collectibles like shells, humanity discovered a better trading method. Instead of exchanging goods directly, you could trade your goods for valuable placeholders like an IOU. This allowed people to trade for the items they truly needed later on. It was an ingenious idea, so effective that the world gradually shifted from bartering to a money-based system. However, there remained a critical issue. For money to hold value, it must be scarce. The more available something is, the lower its perceived value. Basic economics tells us that if everyone has easy access to something, it isn't worth much. For example, items like sand or shells found on beaches weren't ideal measures of value. Around 770 BC, China created the first metal coins. They made these coins in miniature forms of once-used currency tools, casting them in bronze and making them circular for easy handling. Finally, money had true value. It was scarce and thus valuable. At that time, money wasn't yet an illusion. Its value was tied to the metal it contained. A coin made from a gram of gold was worth that exact amount. But soon, kings realized the power of money. They understood that controlling more precious metals meant more power. So in 600 BC, Aliats, king of Lydia, established the first official mint. He produced coins from a mix of silver and gold, stamping them with images to denote value. Yet rulers wanted even more money, and precious metals were costly. They began thinning out coins and mixing precious metals with cheaper ones. Soon, coins in circulation were worth less than the image indicated, and the illusion of money was born. The value of a coin no longer depended on the metal, but on the ruler's decree. In the case of the British pound, 1 pound represented a pound of sterling silver. But as international trade grew, people found metal coins too heavy for long-distance trade. So, kings began issuing IOU certificates, stamped by the king. These papers were trusted and could be redeemed for coins. With more IOUs circulating, people relied less on coins until paper was worth what we believed, even without a physical metal exchange. From ancient kings to today's governments and central banks, money remains an illusion, a representation valued by our collective belief. The highest banknote in circulation is the 10,000 Singapore dollar note. Though no longer produced, it's still legal tender, allowing purchases of valuable items like houses, cars, or gold. This note, costing under 20 cents to print, reflects the fiat currency illusion, valued like 120 grams of gold. Fiat defines this modern illusion, a Latin word meaning, let it be done, a government decree assigning value and enforcing it as legal tender. We rarely consider money's illusory nature, yet today's governments understand its power, as kings did. And they want more. They can simply print money from thin air. If, for instance, the US needed $340 million for an F-22 jet, it could just print it. But this brings inflation. Money must primarily serve as a medium of exchange, meaning the supply should match the goods and services produced. When more money is created than goods and services, prices rise and money loses value. Many economists and everyday people now worry about the US dollar, the global reserve currency. 2020 was a devastating year. Amidst the pandemic, economies shut down, reducing goods and services to a trickle, and the world paused. With less money flowing to sustain the economy, the US began printing money at an unprecedented rate. Now, 40% of all US dollars were printed in the last 18 months. As the country's output hasn't increased proportionally, prices may eventually soar. You can see this in commodities like lumber, which tripled in price within a year. If you haven't noticed, some prices at your favorite restaurants are slightly higher than last year. Perhaps an additional 20 cents for guacamole at Chipotle. On the surface, government stimulus and unemployment checks seem positive, supporting those in need. But it's a double-edged sword. With inflation and a slowed economy, many can't find suitable jobs at the right times. Sometimes it's simply because the alternative is better. For instance, in the US, waiters aren't required to receive minimum wage. Some earn $2 to $3 per hour, with the rest from tips. However, with restrictions and fewer patrons, tips are low. As a waiter or waitress, there's no legal requirement to be paid even the minimum wage. Some are literally earning $2 to $3 an hour, with the rest of their income depending on tips. However, with numerous restrictions in place nationwide and fewer people going out, there are fewer customers and less money being spent means fewer tips. If employees aren't making enough, they'll quit, plain and simple. If a business doesn't have staff to keep it running, it will go under. It's a domino effect. But what can someone do when they can earn more from unemployment benefits and stimulus checks than from being employed? Why even bother looking for a job? The Federal Reserve in the United States has a subtle way for the government to create money from nothing and inject it into the economy without people noticing too much. Before 2020, the United States was already $29 trillion in debt, an almost unimaginable amount. This debt comes in the form of bonds and treasury notes, which are essentially pieces of paper stating that the government will pay a certain amount plus interest. Currently, a 10-year U.S. Treasury bond yields about 1.23% upon maturity. So if you invest $1,000 today, you'll have earned just $12.30 by 2031. This is already disappointing, but it gets worse when you consider that this yield doesn't even keep up with inflation, which is targeted to hover around 2% annually. It's actually much higher, but that's a discussion for another time. Investing in your government's bonds with the currency you use daily leads to a loss in purchasing power over a decade. It weakens every day. Nonetheless, banks, businesses, and individuals globally continue to buy these bonds, allowing the government to use the money as it sees fit. But when it's time to repay its debt, all the money has already been spent, so the government buys back bonds and treasuries, but only from large financial institutions, paying them back with newly created money. Since March 2020, the Federal Reserve has bought back over $1 trillion in bonds and plans to continue this for the foreseeable future. With this influx of new money from the government, banks can issue more loans, earn higher interest, and help stimulate the economy. However, this also increases the total money in circulation, reducing each dollar's value. With multi-trillion-dollar stimulus packages and infrastructure investments, one has to wonder how long this can go on. New money takes value from old money. The amount in your bank account stays the same, but because the government has printed more from nothing, your money isn't worth as much as it was. Essentially, every moment you store wealth in any fiat currency, like the US dollar, it's being devalued. You could watch your bank balance, and day by day, you'll find you can buy fewer things with it. The reality that money is just an illusion is one we must all accept, for only then can the path to financial freedom become clear. It's all a game that never really ends. Realizing that money has no intrinsic value of its own, but only holds the worth we give it helps prevent the urge to store wealth in currency. Instead, using that money to acquire assets that appreciate faster than inflation is the only way to win the game. But it's not truly winning, it's avoiding total loss. As more and more money is printed each day, the value of each dollar in your pocket keeps dropping, while the dollar value of assets worldwide continues to rise. But it's all a mirage, smoke, and mirrors. A stock market that's constantly rising can create an illusion of stability, but it's all denominated in a currency that's slowly dying. For example, if you measure the Dow Jones, a benchmark of the performance of 30 large US companies, in terms of gold instead of US dollars, you'd see we're roughly at the same level we were in 1997. It's all smoke and mirrors. So what is the end game? With fiat currency and an endless money supply, will the value of each currency continue to fall indefinitely? Will the wealth gap keep widening? Or are we finally going to address a problem as old as humanity itself and stop entrusting our financial future to those who erode it day by day? Only time will tell, but know that there is a way out.